my name is Sophie, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about my research and how it relates to the themes of decolonization and contested landscapes of this workshop. Increasingly, protected areas exist as core buffer complexes characterized by a gradient of land management. And this is the case for my study area, Jule National Park in central Mozambique. Under this conservation model, the core is strictly protected, excluding all consumptive land uses, whilst the buffer acts as a transitional zone from which communities can sustainably derive material benefits. In their earliest iterations, buffer zones were seen primarily as a means of enlarging viable wildlife habitat and minimizing edge effects. However, more recently, they have been described as new frontiers of participatory conservation, with objectives aligning closely to those of community-based conservation. As such, buffer zones are often expected to provide integrated solutions, delivering both conservation and development outcomes. However, the extension of state jurisdiction and influence of international NGOs on land surrounding protected areas has major implications for the politics of the land and, in the case of Jule, fire. Around Jule National Park, swiddening or slash and burn agriculture is the dominant livelihood activity amongst the buffer zone's population of 12,000 inhabitants. Changes in land cover and habitat encroachment have been consistently attributed to the practice. Meanwhile, the agricultural burning used to prepare the fields is considered a primary source of wildfire ignition. For these reasons, there is a consensus amongst the park authorities that the practice presents a major threat to conservation and requires appropriate management. Indeed, over the last 2 decades, a variety of actors have attempted to modify agricultural practices and burning behavior. Yet, little to no change in land use trends or fire regimes has been observed through remote sensing, raising questions around the efficiency of past management plans. During my fieldwork, I came to conceptualize the buffer zone as a highly politicized space, where the power relations between local communities and the state are profoundly affected by the global environmental agenda that remains rooted in colonial discourses centered around an idealized, untouched African landscape. In particular, my thesis argues that current attempts to control fire have largely ignored local knowledge and thus ultimately reproduce macro narratives which portray indigenous farmers as ignorant, lazy, and inherently destructive. In turn, these harmful portrayals serve as a justification for further paternalistic and punitive government interventions, as well as the proliferation of foreign NGO-led projects. In many ways, the pretext of controlling wildfires has served to bolster the authority of the state and maintain the influence of the West in remote and formerly neglected rural areas. Arguably then, fire management has left a much more pronounced impact on the political landscape than the physical one.